Hey guys, this is Justin back with an engineer's perspective, and today I'm doing a review on some sharpening stones. I think I've got a first impressions video out there on what's in this box. It is the Chosera or Naniwa Chosera or Pro line 800 and 3000 stones. I bought them as a set from the Perfection store, the guy on YouTube. Arrived very fast via FedEx, well packaged, and you buy them as a set and you get them at a ridiculous deal. So the pair of these was $138 before tax. Shipping was free. So they come in this pretty nice case. So this brick red one, which is still wet from using it, is the 800 grit, and this pinkish color is the 3000, and these, and there's the case. It's got little vent holes. The stone can sit in the top there, and it's got little rubber feet. Not a bad sharpening stand, but it does move a little bit while you're sharpening, so not ideal, but it's a nice case. These are the full 70 millimeter by 210 millimeter that the normal stones are. But instead of being 20 millimeters tall, they are 15 millimeters tall. So that's where you're saving that money. They're really hard, long-lasting stones, and especially the grit ratings they are. Like a 400, maybe I'd be worried, but you don't have to worry about wearing these stones out unless you are a pro sharpener and sharpening thousands of knives. So as a home user, as a professional cook, I think the thickness is quite adequate on these guys. So that out of the way, let's talk about these a little bit. So full disclosure, I have basically only had these for a week, but I have sharpened on them a lot. I went a little bit crazy. I had quite a bit of fun. I sharpened, let me count over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 knives. And I did a couple of them 2 or 3 times. So I've probably sharpened only 20 times total on these, okay? So I'll probably do like a 3 to 6 month update on these, but there's some stuff over here that I want to talk about past just the generic stone stuff. But I just want to mention a couple things. Is generally speaking, these are very hard, very slow wearing, professional high-end sharpening stones. They have pretty decent feedback overall. We'll get into that. And they give really good results. Generally speaking, I'd say the speed of this 800, it's slower than the King Neo, but it's quite a bit faster than the 1K stones I've come across. So it's kind of in between. It will generate just the slightest slurry on there. And the 3K, I would say, is, some people compare this, the finish of this, to the Shawn Pro 5K, and it's hard to say. I'm confused a little bit. It's not exactly the same, but it's close. And it does have better feedback than the Shawn Pro 5K and cuts faster, it seems. The actual finish on it, I'm kind of conflicted on. So this isn't an exact comparison to other stones. I just want to talk about these specifically. So I just kind of want to throw those out there. And then the resulting edges of these are very good. It's very easy to deburr on this 800, so I like that it's pretty fast and very easy to deburr. I like the 800 more than I actually like the 3K. I thought I would really love the 3K. And that's because, the 3K definitely takes this edge up to the next notch. It's very optimal for removing these 800 grit scratches, by the way. And it definitely takes that edge up to the next level of refinement, but it's not like the exact level of refinement I like when I'm looking for a higher grit finish, but it's kind of, I'd say it's best suited for a slightly, I don't want to say toothy, but grabbier edge than overly refined edge. So I guess that is kind of a compliment, I suppose. But they give really good results on every steel I tried them on. I got good results. Yeah, do I recommend these? If you at this price, I think it's really hard to beat it, especially if you want something that's really easy to, you just wet them. If you haven't used them in a while, they'll soak for like 30 seconds. So I just spray some water on, it soaks in, spray some water on, and it stays. And then when you're done, I just run them under the tap. I'll flatten them potentially. I've been doing it like every 3 times. And then this one, see how it's kind of got the air vents? I'll put like that. Then the 8 cakes, the back usually isn't to it. I'll put like that. And I'll just leave the case like that because these feet elevate it. And then they dry like that. Or sometimes I'll leave the 8K over there. So I really like the case because it allows them to dry, but you can like put them away still. So I really like that. Yeah, overall they're really great. For this combination is a great price. If you're looking for a one and done stone deal, I do recommend that you go this route. And yeah, so let's kind of talk about the actual performance of these a little more in depth. So I went full nerd engineer and I made a chart. So a Chosera 803K performance curve. So basically for every steel that I sharpened, which I forgot to keep or bring the list out, but for every steel and knife that I sharpened, I gave it a rating. So I said feedback, oh yeah, you can see that. So feedback, and I gave it a rating from 0 to 5. And I said cutting speed, 0 to 5. And then I summed them up to get a score between 0 and 10, and I just called that the composite score. Okay, so 0 is being bad, means there's very little feedback, you might as well be sharpening on a piece of glass, and 5 being you can feel exactly where that edge is at, and it's speaking to you a lot. And then speed being very good for its grit rating, and 0 being it's basically not cutting at all for its grit rating. And then I just added the two together to get the composite score. And I based all of these off of VG10, Chosera VG10 as like the standard, the control. So what does that mean is I said that for Chosera VG10, which is kind of just like the most basic of all steel, I said feedback is equal to 3 and speed is equal to 3, right? So right in the middle of the range, right? So my basis was 6. So basically any steel with a composite higher than 6, meaning it sharpened up, had better feedback and better speed, that's what I considered to be a good steel to sharpen on these stones. And that's what the green dots over here represent. So you can see those green dots in this region. And any steel with a composite score of 5, I said is kind of borderline, and I made those blue. So that's this here, this one, and that one are kind of borderline, like they don't feel that great on these stones. Like it's like a good match for them. And then anything less than 5, I said was a poor steel choice to sharpen on these stones. So let me write that down on here. So green is greater than 5, blue is equal to 5, and orange is less than 5. Okay. So I assigned all the different steels be good, borderline, and poor. And then from that, this is where it gets pretty fun, I took the Rockwell hardness of each steel and its total carbide volume of each steel, and I plotted them all on this chart. And you can see, based off of this, the trend. So any steel that is on this, that has like the low enough carbide volume and low enough hardness, is going to be good to go. And then any steel that basically hits this red dashed line I put in there is going to be borderline. And then anything on this side in the orange region is going to be a poor match. So how do you use this? So if you have a bunch of knives and you're wondering if the choseras are going to be a good match in terms of feedback and speed, so let me remind you that all of the steels, even ones you wouldn't think that would, actually had good results. I had good results on all of them. But in terms of feedback and speed, you can look on this chart and see where it lands. So you're gonna have to go to knifesteelnerds.com or buy the knifesteelnerds.com or the Larrin Thomas book, and you're gonna have to go in there and you're gonna have to find the carbide volume for that steel, and then you're gonna have to find what they advertise for the Rockwell or what people are reporting. So let's just take an example. So let's look at Miyabi's AEBL or FC61, right? So that's a steel that we run into a lot. So the way Miyabi names their steels, it's FC61. The 61 is the Rockwell target, and FC is what they make up, so that's fine carbide. But it's AEBL. So we go to Rockwell 61, so that's going to be between 60 and 62. We go over, and AEBL has 6% carbide, and we land right there at that green dot because that is Miyabi's FC61. So we see that it's on this side of the curve, which means it's going to be a nice steel to sharpen on these Chosera stones. Let's look at another example of Toyojiro's VG10. So VG10 has about 12% carbide volume, so that puts us right here, and it's about 60 Rockwell. So we go up the 12% line up to 60. There you go. So it's on the good side of the line there. So those are two examples of good steels to choose. So now let's look at another one, HAP 40 or Rex 45. I sharpened Rex 45. So Rex 45 has about 8% carbide volume. So that's going to be this line right here. And it's between 65 and 67 Rockwell, so we'll call it 66. So 8% all the way up to 66 Rockwell. So that's this blue dot right here. It's borderline. So if you're interested in sharpening HAP 40 on these stones, it's kind of borderline in terms of feedback and speed. Let's look at another borderline steel down here. So Leatherman's 154 CM is run pretty soft as far as I can tell based on feel and just kind of judgment. But 154 CM has 16% carbide volume. I'm guessing Leatherman runs it between 58 and 59, but I'm going to call it 58. And you can see it's kind of right next to that line there, so it's kind of borderline. And you can kind of determine steels that way. So then let's look at one more, or actually two more examples. So let's look at an orange one. So like K390, I sharpened on this. And K390 has 17% vanadium carbide, so that's right here. And it was in the Delica 4. Those are run about 64.5 Rockwell. So 17%, 64.5. So you're way into the bad range, or the poor range rather. And K390, there is basically no feedback, but the speed was a 1 is what I called. I called feedback 0.5 and I did speed as 1 for K390. And but it did give me good results, and the speed, I was surprised it was a 1 because K390 does not want to move and be sharpened. But I all of these in this testing, I blunted them by running them over the corner of this 3 times before I sharpened. Yeah. So that's how you use this curve. Maybe I'll publish it if somebody's interested, but I'm just gonna kind of leave it right there, and you can kind of just use it based off of by pausing the YouTube video there. And then the last note I wanted to make is on vanadium carbide specifically. So I was super curious as to the effect of K390, or not K390, vanadium carbide content. I thought it would have a very big effect on both results and on speed and feedback. From my experience from this testing is it definitely has an effect, without a doubt. But the effect is much smaller than I thought it was going to be. And this is the case in point right here, is SG2 and M4. So they both have 13.5% carbide volume, but SG2 is 13% of it, that is chromium carbide, whereas in M4, it's 7% chromium carbide. So because M4 has, I should have said it the other way, it has 6.5% vanadium carbide versus the 0.5%, the M4 got a score of 2.5 versus the SG2 got a score of 5. So SG2 is in theory twice as nice to sharpen as M4 in terms of feedback and speed. And even though they have the same carbide volume, but the reason why M4 was worse is because it has, what number is that? 12 times the vanadium carbide. So I'm going to write that out for you really quick. So M4, so carbide content, vanadium carbide. So M4 has 13.5% total, and of that 13.5%, 6.5% is vanadium carbide. And then in SG2, it has the same carbide content, but only 0.5 of that is vanadium carbide. So do you see that? So they have the same carbide content, but for steels that have a very high vanadium carbide content, there's going to be a reduction. And the cutoff number for that seems to be around 4 to 5%. So I sharpen steels like Crewware and Rex 45. So Crewware has 3.5% vanadium carbide. Rex 45 has 2.5% vanadium carbide. Both of those sharpen great. Didn't bother the Choseras at all. So I would guess 5% vanadium carbide is probably the cutoff, but it depends on the hardness, is my guess here. But that's why SG2 and M4 are so different, because of that vanadium carbide in terms of their score. Because yeah, M4 scored a 2.5 composite, whereas SG2 scored a 5 composite. So there you go. If you're looking at the Choseras and you're wondering if they're a good match for the steels that you have, use this chart of carbide volume and hardness to see where it lands. And then side note is if it has a lot of vanadium carbide, probably 5% or more, then you're probably going to be, it's probably not going to be a good choice. Just compare it to M4 in terms of hardness and everything else. But yeah, so there you go. That is a very in-depth and sciencey view on the Choseras. I hope that made sense and didn't fry anyone's brains, but this was pretty fun for me to do, so I enjoyed it quite thoroughly. I'm sorry that this printed off so small, but my printer is all goofed up right now. So that's all I've got. I really like the Choseras. I got good results on every steel I sharpened, everything from blue number 2 to Crewware to SG2 to K390. That's a really wide range. They all gave good results. So they're really great stones. And yeah, I do recommend them, especially in this package at that price. So thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.